Hi, I'm Crystal.
And I'm Rachel, aka Felicity, and today we're here to talk to you about how to write swoon-worthy love scenes. As writers of romance, we're often asked a lot of questions about what it's like to write within the genre, but one that we see over and over again is, do I have to write a love scene if I want to write a romance? And the answer to that question is no, you don't have to. But there are two questions that you want to ask yourself if you decide that you do want to insert such a scene into your story.
Number one is this appropriate for my audience? Some audiences, it is absolutely inappropriate to write a detailed love scene for. A good example of this would be YA. You don't want to put too many details in there because you're looking at a readership between 13 and 17, and you do not want angry parents writing you a letter as to why you are writing detailed love scenes. However, there are other genres like contemporary romance, fantasy romance, um, paranormal romance. Those would be genres that you would definitely want to look at writing a love scene for.
Number two, does it fit into the plot of your story? Wattpad is our platform that we use. So when we talk about what's appropriate and what's not, we're really talking about Wattpad here. If you want your story to remain on the site, you better make sure that your plot goes with your sex scene. And what I mean by that is you're not just writing a love scene in order to write a love scene, if that makes sense. You have to have it further your plot in some way, or you're going to go into the realm of erotica, which is, if you want to be an erotica writer, that's fine. You cannot do it on Wattpad. So you want to make sure that you're being very careful as to if that love scene is necessary to your plot. We have divided love scenes into 4 different categories. The first one is fade to black. And what that is when you write all of the things leading up to the actual love scene. The flirtation, the tension, the kissing, the intent. You know that's what they're going to do. It's obvious they're headed that direction. But before it starts, you cut and you fade to black. Think about where that comes from is, think about a TV show or a movie when something's about to happen and it all fades out. That's what you're doing. Then you pick it back up after and you look at all the things that happen after the deed, the emotions, the discussion, the feelings, the aftermath, if you will. So that's the first kind. That's the most tame of them all. Number 2 is the suggestive love scene. Personally, this is one of my favorites. It focuses more on the emotional side of the act rather than the physical side. There's a lot of suggestion. You know what's happening. It's a little less tame than the Fade to Black because you are showing the actual scene, but it's very suggestive and you really only focus on the really emotional part of it.
The next 2 are going to require you to flip the mature button on Wattpad. The first is descriptive. This is where you go into the details and the emotional side of everything that's happening within the love scene. It's actually what we'll be focusing on as we continue on in the video, is writing these type of love scenes. Erotic is super detailed. Every type of movement that's going on in the love scene is described. So any little details, they're there. There's nothing really left to the imagination as to what is going on between the love interest and the main character or whoever you're writing a love scene for. This is something you want to be careful with on Wattpad, as erotica is not allowed, but an extremely detailed love scene when part of a plot is allowed on Wattpad. It just requires that you flip the mature button.
Like Crystal said earlier, the rest of our discussion is going to be dealing with writing the descriptive love scene. And we have come up with what we believe to be the best recipe for writing the most realistic, non-cringeworthy love scene possible. Number 1, building up the sexual tension. Do not just jump into a love scene without doing any build up first. You have to have some kind of relationship between the 2 characters, or your readers probably aren't going to care too much that they're doing the deed. Because what you really want, like we said earlier, is for this love scene to move your plot forward. And it's not going to do that if you haven't built up a plot before you write it.
This is a moment that I think that the readers have really kind of looked forward to if you're writing a pure romance. It's kind of this consummation of the relationship. So I think that buildup of the tension is really, really important. or if this is your big love scene. Maybe you've had a couple littler love scenes throughout it. When you get to this big descriptive love scene, I think that that's really important to have that build up when you get here. It could be a reason that your readers kind of stick around. Number two, engage all five senses. What I mean by this is talk about what your characters are feeling, seeing, hearing in this moment. Smelling, that seems to always be a perfect one. Does it smell like saddlewood? These are the kind of things that you want to add in there to make your readers feel like they're really there with your characters in that moment. So it's really important, and it also breaks up the list of things. He did this, she did that, and so it ends up, your love scene can end up being an absolute long list of all these movements while they're in the moment, if you're not breaking it up with these little things that bring the reader in to understand what senses are being engaged in the moment.
Definitely. And you spoke of all five senses. This goes for all writing. If you're not doing this in your writing, you really should. It's something that really, really gives the reader a true mental picture of what it is you're writing. If you're just relying on the seeing and the hearing, which is what we see a lot, you're not going to be touching people with your writing. And that's essentially what you want to do, is really get to their heart. And you're not going to do that with two out of five senses.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that was something that it actually took me a moment to learn when I first started out writing, that I would kind of talk about, it was a lot, very much focused on dialogue and the actions, but I wasn't engaging those five senses. And that really changed the writing game for me, when I learned that that's how you're going to bring people into the story with you.
Number three is language. Language when writing a love scene is of the utmost importance. Here's my first tip. Don't use clinical terms when you're discussing body parts during your love scene. And here's what I mean by that. If you might see it in your 9th grade health textbook, don't use it. It's not romantic. It's not sweet. It's not swoon worthy. It's scientific. And love scenes are not meant to be scientific. If you need more guidance on this, you may use the Google and search it. What body part, what words can I use to describe body parts during a love scene? Because trust me, there are websites out there to help you. Sounds weird, but true. The next is, don't use purple prose. Purple prose is over the top, extremely flowery language, just, and I hate to say it this way, but to show off your vocabulary. Don't do that. It's okay once in a while. It's beautiful. It's poetic. But reading a love scene full of purple prose is not something that a reader wants. Here's an example, very, very basic example of efficient language and purple prose. If you wanted to say, I went to the grocery store today and got my food for the week. If you wanted to say that in purple prose, you might say, I traversed the city today and I wandered the marketplace in order to gather my provisions for the week.
Nobody talks like that.
Seriously, don't do it. It's so cheesy. And it's okay once in a while to add in a little beautiful poetic. But if your entire book hasn't been beautiful poetic language and you add it in the middle of a love scene, one, it's out of place. And two, if your whole book is full of purple prose, you might want to go back and edit, because most people, especially Wattpad readers, don't want to read that.
Yeah, it's not relatable. It's not normal speak, and kind of important that your narrator, whether it's in first person, third person, however you're choosing to narrate, that they are speaking on the level of your audience. And so purple prose a lot of times is not speaking to a wide variety of people. And that brings us to number 4, which is to write your love scenes responsibly. The best example of this is Consent is Sexy. So sexy. I love it when we are reading a love scene and there's kind of this uncertainty there, and one character asks the other, is this okay? I don't know. There's something about that moment that's just great dialogue in there, and I just love it. Like, So I really think that that's sexy.
Number 5 is dialogue. I love dialogue. Dialogue is one of my strengths. I love writing it. But in a love scene, dialogue is not always appropriate because going back to the crassness, oftentimes when you're trying to write dialogue in the middle of a love scene, it might turn a little bit crass and you don't want to do that. You also don't want to have your characters having these serious conversations in the middle of the act. It's not realistic. It's just not. So a line of dialogue here and there is fine, but it's not always needed. Use the character's thoughts. That can be so powerful. You can talk afterward. You can have your characters talk afterward and get the other person's point of view. But thoughts can be super powerful during that time, and you want to add the thoughts in. That's part of how you'll get your 5 senses in there. But don't feel like you have to have dialogue because it's just not always necessary.
So we hope that this discussion helped you with some ideas on how to better your love scenes in your story. Just remember, there's a lot that you want to engage in with your reader to make sure that they're really brought into this moment and they're excited for it. So I think that's the most important thing when you're talking about a romance and getting to those steamy moments.
Remember, you can read our stories for free on Wattpad at Crystal and Felicity. We upload new videos every Friday, so make sure to subscribe and hit the little notification bell so you never miss a video.
Thank you so much for joining us for this discussion on writing swoon-worthy romances. And as always, remember to
Write what you love.